Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I'll be breaking down the NBA slate for Tuesday, March 28th. We've got 8 games on today's Tuesday slate. A lot of good high-scoring games on this slate. Should be a pretty fun slate. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, at point guard, your top point guard on today's slate is James Harden. He gets a really good matchup at home against the Warriors. First off, I'm going to go ahead and say I love this game. You're going to want to play as many players as you can from this game. This game is going to be very high-scoring, and it should be very competitive. I really like James Harden on this slate if you can afford the salary and if you can find the value plays to go with him. He has incredible upside in this matchup. He could go off for 80 to 90 fantasy points. And Harden has been playing very well lately. He's been pretty consistent. Aside from his last game against OKC, Harden was getting close to the 60s, had some games in 70s. I definitely think he can get you at least 60 fantasy points in this matchup with 80 to 90 point upside. I really like this game. It's going to be a very high-scoring game. You're going to want to target players from this game. Definitely think you should pay up for Harden if you can find the value to go with him. He's going to be the stud that I pay up for on this slate. In that same game, you got Steph Curry. I don't think I'm going to be playing Curry, not at $51. That is a little expensive for him. He hasn't paid off that price tag but once in his last 5 games. I'm not going to be playing Curry going up against Patrick Beverley. Beverley is a really good defender. I think Curry can get you 40 to 50 fantasy points in this matchup, but at $51, he has to get at least 50 to be worth the play. So I'm not going to be playing Curry on Yahoo, but now if he's cheap on other sites, then I like him. He could get hot in this game, and he could go off, but I don't think it's very likely that he gets you 50 plus and pays off that price, so I don't think I'm going to be on Curry. At close to that same price, $1 less, you got John Wall going up against the Lakers. If you don't want to pay up to the top for Harden at point guard, I definitely like Wall at $50. This is a really good matchup against the Lakers. This game is in LA, so it should be somewhat of a close game. Hopefully, if you play Wall, you can get 4 quarters out of him. If this game does stay close, Wall has really good upside, and I definitely think he can return value on that $50 price tag. He needs about 50 fantasy points to do that. It's very likely that he does that against the Lakers. They really struggle defensively, and they play at a very, very fast pace, so I definitely like John Wall as well. Also like Damian Lillard going up against Denver. Denver really struggles to defend point guards, and they play at a very fast pace. This game should also be very high scoring. Both of these teams play up in pace. And I do like Lillard in this game. I'm not a big fan of that price tag at $46. He needs about 45 to 50 fantasy points to return value. But Lillard has been doing that lately. He hadn't gotten over less than 40 fantasy points in his last 5 games. He's put up 61, 55, 46, 44, and 44 in his last 5. So Lillard's been very consistent. I definitely think he can get you at least 40 fantasy points today against Denver. So if you want to pay for point guard, I also definitely like Dame on this slate. I think he's in play. Kemba going up against Milwaukee. I don't think I'm going to be playing Kemba on this slate. Milwaukee is pretty solid against point guards. I like Kemba's price tag at $41. He only needs about 40 to 45 fantasy points to return value. And he is playing at home where he does play a lot better. But I don't really like this matchup going up against the Bucks. Like I said, they're pretty solid against point guards. If you're going to pay up for point guard, I would probably go with Harden, Wall, or Dame. I don't think I'm going to be on Kemba. This isn't that great of a matchup, so I'm not going to be on him. Goran Dragic against Detroit. I really like this matchup. Going up against Ish Smith, he is not a good defender, and Detroit really struggles to defend point guards. Now, Dragic has been a little inconsistent lately. In his last 5, he's put up 43, 30, 25, 37, and 19 fantasy points. But Dragic has been getting heavy minutes. And with Dion Waiters out, he's really had to step up. If Waiters continues to be out, you can definitely target Goran Dragic at the mid-range. I think he can easily get you 35 fantasy points and return value on his price. So if you don't want to pay up to the top, you want to attack the mid-range, I like Dragic. At that same price tag, I also really like Ricky Rubio going up against Indiana. The Pacers really struggle to defend point guards. Rubio has been a little inconsistent lately. On his last 3 games, he's only put up 28. Had a good game against LA, put up 51, but then struggled against Portland, only put up 26. I definitely think Rubio can easily bounce back today and get you 35 to 40 fantasy points and return value on that $35 price tag. Like I said, Indiana does struggle to defend point guards. So I like Rubio if you're going to attack the mid-range. I think he is in play. In that same game, you got Jeff Teague going up against Minnesota. I don't think I'm going to be playing Teague on this slate, not at $28. His price has increased, and I don't really like that price. And this isn't that great of a matchup either. Minnesota is pretty solid against point guards. Ricky Rubio is actually a pretty good defender. So I don't think I'm going to be on Jeff Teague. He only needs about 30 fantasy points to return value, and I think he can do that, but if I'm going to pay that price tag for a point guard, I would much rather have Dennis Schroder for $1 less going up against the Suns. The Suns really struggle to defend point guards. Tyler Ulis is not a good defender. And I love Schroder's price tag at just $27. He is way too cheap. He only needs about 30 fantasy points to return value, and he's been doing that lately. In his last 5, he's put up 28, 35, 19, and has had 2 really good games, put up 48 and 41. I definitely think he can get you at least 30 fantasy points in this matchup with 40 to 50 point upside. So I really like Dennis Schroder. If you're going to attack the mid-range, I think he's a great play at the point guard position, especially on Yahoo. He is very underpriced at just $27. He shouldn't have a problem paying off that salary. So I like Schroder at the mid-range. Tyler Ulis going up against Atlanta. This is a really good matchup. Atlanta does struggle to defend point guards. Ulis' price is starting to get up there, though, at $22. He needs about 25 to 30 fantasy points to return value. I definitely think you can play Ulis on this slate. He is still a little underpriced at $22. I think he can return value, especially in this matchup against Atlanta. They do struggle to defend point guards. So if you want to attack the mid-range, I like Tyler Ulis on this slate. I like Lou Williams as well going up against Golden State. This is a perfect game where Lou Will could absolutely go off. Should be a very high-scoring game, and they're going to need Lou Will to score the ball. So I definitely like Lou Will if you're going to attack the mid-range. He had a very good game last time out against OKC, put up 43 fantasy points, and he played 30 minutes. I definitely think Lou Will is going to have to play heavy minutes today. They're going to need him. They're going to need his scoring ability going up against the Warriors. So I definitely like Lou Will as well. And especially for tournaments, I definitely like Lou Will. If he gets hot, he can put up 30 to 40 fantasy points. So I like him at the mid-range. And also like Jordan Clarkson for $1 less. Clarkson is still way underpriced on Yahoo at just $20. He only needs about 25 fantasy points to return value. And he can definitely do that in this matchup against Washington. Now, Washington is pretty solid against point guards, but Clarkson is just way too cheap. And he's playing close to 40 minutes just about every night. With the amount of minutes Clarkson gets, he shouldn't have a problem returning value on his cheap price tag. So if you're going to attack the mid-range, also like Jordan Clarkson on this slate, especially on Yahoo where he's just $20. He is way underpriced. And if you need some value, I like Ish Smith going up against Miami. Now, this isn't that great of a matchup. Miami is pretty solid against point guards, but Smith is just way too cheap on Yahoo at just $13. He only needs about 20 to 25 fantasy points to return value, and he can definitely do that. He did bounce back in his last game. He was struggling, but in his last game against the Knicks, he's put up 25 fantasy points. So if you need some value at point guard, I like Ish Smith. I definitely think he can return value on that cheap price tag. And yeah, that's pretty much it for point guard. Let's go and move on to shooting guard. Your top shooting guard on this slate is Bradley Beal. He gets a really good matchup against the Lakers. They really struggle to defend shooting guards, and the Lakers play at a very fast pace. Beal's price is really starting to get up there now on Yahoo at $43. He needs about 45 fantasy points to return value on that price tag. And even in this up-and-pace matchup, I don't think it's very likely that Beal's going to be able to do that. So I'm not going to be playing him on Yahoo, especially not at $43. That is very expensive. Now, if Beal is cheaper on other sites, then I definitely like him. But on Yahoo, I won't be playing him at that $43 price tag. I think he is way too expensive. Klay Thompson going up against Houston. I definitely like Thompson on this slate for tournaments, but I doubt I would target him for cash at $34. He's going to need about 35 to 40 fantasy points to return value, and it's not very likely that Thompson can do that, but if he gets hot, he can definitely has the upside for tournaments that you're looking for. Like I said, this should be a very high-scoring game, so they're going to need Klay's scoring ability. If you need somebody for tournaments, I like Klay Thompson on this slate. CJ McCollum going up against Denver. I definitely like McCollum in this matchup. Denver plays at a very fast pace, and this game should also be very high scoring. I definitely like McCollum as well if you're going to pay up for shooting guard. He can easily return value on a $33 price tag. He only needs about 35 fantasy points to do that. And in this fast-paced, high-scoring game, it's very likely that McCollum can get you 35 to 40 fantasy points. So if you're going to pay up for shooting guard, also like CJ, I think he is in play. D'Angelo Russell going up against Washington. I don't think I'm going to be playing Russell on the slate, not at $29. I think he is way too expensive. He hadn't been returning value lately. If I'm going to attack that price range, I would much rather have Devin Booker for $1 less. Booker just had one of his best games of his career against Boston on March 24th. He put up 93 fantasy points and had 70 real points. And with Eric Bledsoe shut down for the season, Booker has been the guy the Suns have relied on. So he's going to be heavily involved in this offense. If you're going to attack the mid-range at shooting guard, I definitely like Devin Booker on this slate. He is very underpriced at just $28. He only needs 30 fantasy points to return value, and it's very likely that he does that against Atlanta. They really struggle against shooting guards. So if you're going to attack the mid-range, I like Devin Booker on this slate. I definitely think he is in play. And for $1 less, you got Nick Batum going up against Milwaukee. I like Batum in this matchup. Milwaukee isn't that good defensively against the shooting guard. And Batum is also pretty cheap as well at just $27. He only needs about 30 fantasy points to return value. And he can definitely do that in this matchup. But I'm probably not going to be playing Batum on Yahoo. If I'm going to attack that price range as shooting guard, I would much rather just have Devin Booker for $1 more. So I'm probably not going to be on Batum, but if he is cheap on other sites, then I like him. This is a pretty solid matchup. Another mid-range shooting guard I like is Tim Hardaway against Phoenix. With Kent Bazemore and Paul Millsap out of the lineup, Hardaway has been getting the start as shooting guard, and he's been playing heavy minutes. He's been getting over 35 minutes just about every night, close to 40 minutes. And he is very cheap at just $20. He only needs about 25 fantasy points to pay off that price tag. And it's very likely that Hardaway can do that in this matchup against Phoenix. This should be a very fast-paced game. The Hawks are going to be playing up in pace. So I definitely like Hardaway if you're going to attack the mid-range. He is very underpriced. He shouldn't have a problem returning value on that cheap salary in this up and pace matchup. So I definitely like Hardaway if you're going to attack the mid-range. I think he is in play. And a couple value plays I like. One guy I like is Monta Ellis going up against Minnesota. Ellis did start in their last game against the Sixers, and he played 28 minutes and put up 23 fantasy points. If Ellis continues to start, you can definitely target him for value. He's the minimum price on Yahoo. He only needs about 20 fantasy points to pay off that price. And if he continues to start and he gets the minutes, he can definitely do that in this matchup against the Timberwolves. They do struggle against shooting guards, so I like Monta Ellis if you need some value. And one more value play I like is Allen Crabbe going up against Denver. Like I said earlier, this should be a very fast-paced, high-scoring game. And scoring is what Crabbe does best. So he should have to play heavy minutes in this matchup. They're going to need his scoring ability off the bench. And Crabbe has actually been getting pretty heavy minutes as well. He's been getting close to 30 minutes just about every night. He's also the minimum price on Yahoo. He only needs about 20 fantasy points to return value, like I said. So if you want a shooting guard value play, I like Allen Crabbe. And yeah, that's pretty much it for shooting guard. Let's go ahead and move on to small forward. All right, your top small forward on the slate is Paul George. He doesn't get that great of a matchup against Minnesota. The Timberwolves are pretty solid against the small forward. And PG's price is starting to get up there at $42. That's pretty expensive for him. He needs about 45 fantasy points to pay out that price. And he has been doing that lately, but I don't think I'm going to be targeting PG on this slate. Not with that price increase and given this matchup. I don't think it's very likely that he gets 45 fantasy points. And that's what you need from him to pay off that price. So I'm not going to be on PG. Andrew Wiggins against Indiana. I like Wiggins at just $34. That's pretty cheap for him. He's actually been playing pretty well lately. In his last 5 games, he's put up 32, 29, 32, 49, and 24 fantasy points. With that $34 price tag, he needs about 35 fantasy points to return value. And I think he can do that in this matchup against Indiana. They do struggle against small forwards. So if you're going to pay up for small forward, I like Andrew Wiggins on this slate. I also like Robert Covington going up against Brooklyn. You all know Brooklyn's one of the worst defensive teams, and they play at one of the fastest paces in the league. Rocco is also pretty cheap at just $29. He needs about 30 fantasy points to return value on that price, and he can definitely do that in this fast-paced matchup going up against Brooklyn. So if you're going to attack the mid-range of small forward, I'm really liking Robert Covington on this slate. He has been struggling lately, but I definitely think he bounces back today and gets you 30 fantasy points and returns value on his price tag. So I like Rocco if you're going to attack the mid-range. Also at the mid-range, I like TJ Warren going up against Atlanta. Warren's price is starting to get up there at $27. He needs about 30 fantasy points to return value on that price. But I definitely think he can do that. He's been doing that lately. He's paid off that price tag in 4 of his last 5 games. So if you're going to attack the mid-range, I like Warren on this slate. I'm not a big fan of that price, but with the way he's been playing, he can easily pay that off. Like I said, he only needs about 30 fantasy points to return value. And he can definitely do that against Atlanta. They do struggle against small forwards. So I like TJ Warren as well if you're going to attack the mid-range. I think he is in play. Also at the mid-range, I like Danilo Gallinari going up against Portland. Portland really struggles against small forwards. And Gallo is pretty cheap at just $25. He needs about 25 to 30 fantasy points to pay off that price. And he has been doing that lately. Aside from his last game against New Orleans, Gallo only played 23 minutes in that game because it was a blowout. But before that game, he was playing very well, scoring in the 30s, had a 40-point game against Indiana. I definitely think he can get you 30 fantasy points today against Portland. Like I said, they really struggle against small forwards, and this game should be very high-scoring and a fast-paced game. So I like Gallo if you're going to attack the mid-range. And one value play I'm really liking at small forward is Taurean Prince going up against Phoenix. Prince is expected to start today, and whenever Prince starts and he gets minutes, he crushes value. In his last game against Brooklyn, he played 38 minutes and put up 33 fantasy points. Like I said, he's going to start today, and he should get the minutes with all the guys out. Millsap, Bazemore, and Cephalosha are all out today, so the Hawks are going to be very thin, and they're going to need Prince to play heavy minutes, and he can easily return value on just a $12 price tag, especially going up against Phoenix. Phoenix really struggles against small forward, so if you need some value at small forward, I'm really liking Taurean Prince. He's probably going to be the small forward that I target. I think he's probably one of the best value plays on this slate, especially on Yahoo where he's just $12. He shouldn't have a problem paying off that price. And yeah, that's pretty much it for small forward. Let's go ahead and move on to power forward. All right, your top power forward on this slate is the Greek Freak. He gets a pretty good matchup against Charlotte. Charlotte does struggle to defend power forwards, but I don't think I'm going to be playing Giannis on this slate. I think there are other studs worth targeting, and I don't really like Giannis' price tag at $52. He needs about 55 fantasy points to return value on that price. And even in this good matchup, I don't think it's likely that he does that. I think there are other studs worth paying up for on the slate. So I'm not going to be on the Greek Freak. Draymond Green going up against Houston. I really like Draymond if you want to pay up at power forward. Houston really struggles to defend power forwards. And like I said earlier, this is going to be a very fast-paced game. Definitely like Draymond on the slate. I think he can get you 40 fantasy points in this matchup and pay off that $38 price tag. So I like Draymond if you're going to pay up. For $2 less, I also really like Dario Saric going up against Brooklyn. Brooklyn is one of the worst defensive teams, you all know that, and they play at the fastest pace in the league. Sarge has been struggling a little bit. He has been a little inconsistent. In his last 5 games, he's put up 40, 28, 22, 46, and 19 fantasy points. He can definitely bounce back today against Brooklyn and get you 35 to 40 fantasy points and pay off that $36 price tag. So I like Sarge as well if you want to pay up for power forward. I think he is in play. I'm also really liking Julius Randle going up against Washington. Washington really struggles to defend power forwards, and Randle is pretty cheap at just $30. He needs about 35 fantasy points to pay off that price. I definitely think he can do that today against the Washington. Like I said, the Wizards do struggle to defend power forwards. I definitely think Randle can get you 35 fantasy points in this matchup and return value on his salary. So I like Randle if you want to pay for power forward. I think he's in play. At the mid-range, I like James Johnson going up against Detroit. The Pistons do struggle to defend power forwards. And with Dion Waiters out, JJ's really had to step up and play heavy minutes. And he's been playing pretty well. He's been returning value on his salary. With that $24 price tag, he needs about 25 to 30 fantasy points to pay off that salary. And I think he can do that today against Detroit. Like I said, they do struggle against power forwards. And with Dion Waiters out, JJ has really had to step up and play minutes and produce. So I definitely like him if you're going to attack the mid-range. And if you need some guys on the cheaper end, one guy I like is Ersan Ilyasova going up against Phoenix. With Paul Millsap out, Ilyasova has had to step up, and he's been starting for Millsap. And he's been playing pretty heavy minutes as well. He's been getting just about 30 minutes every night. And he's really cheap on Yahoo at just $19. He needs about 25 fantasy points to pay off that price. And it's very likely that he does that today against Phoenix. Like I've said, Phoenix does struggle to defend power forwards, and they play at a very fast pace. So I definitely like Ilyasova if you need a power forward on the cheaper end. I think he is in play. Also like Marquese Chriss in that same game. With Ersan starting, the Hawks have struggled to defend power forwards. Ersan is not nearly as good as defender as Paul Millsap is. So I definitely like Marquese Chriss if you need some value. He's just $17 on Yahoo. He needs about 20 to 25 fantasy points to pay off that $17 price tag. And he definitely can do that today against Atlanta. Chriss has started to get heavy minutes now that the Suns are playing their younger guys. So I definitely like Chriss as well if you need some value at power forward. I think he's in play. And one more value play I like Rondé Hollis-Jefferson going up against the Sixers. The Sixers really struggle to defend power forwards, and RHJ has been killing it lately. He's put up over 30 fantasy points in 3 straight games. I don't know if he's going to be able to get you 30 today, but he can definitely get you 20 to 25 and pay off that $11 price tag. The only thing I worry about when rostering RHJ is his minutes. He doesn't play very heavy minutes, but even if he gets just about 20 minutes, he can still return value on that $11 price tag. So if you need some value at power forward, I like RHJ. I think he can easily pay off that cheap price, so I like him for value. And yeah, that's pretty much it for power forward. Let's go and move on to center. All right, your top center on this slate is Karl-Anthony Towns. He gets a really good matchup against the Pacers. The Pacers do struggle to defend centers. I definitely think if you want to pay up for center, Cat is definitely in play. Even at $50, he can easily return value on that salary, especially in this matchup against Indiana. Like I said, they struggle against centers, and Cat's been playing pretty well lately. Aside from his last game against Portland, he was playing very consistently, getting at least 40 fantasy points just about every night. I definitely think Cat's a lock for 40 in this matchup with upside of upwards of 60. So I like him if you're going to pet for center. I think he is in play. Also like Nikola Jokic at just $46. That is very cheap for Jokic. He can easily return value on that salary. He needs about 45 to 50 to do that. And it's very likely that he can do that against Portland. So I definitely like Jokic as well if you're going to pay up for center, especially on Yahoo where he's just $46. That is very cheap for him. And you know Jokic has that really good upside that you're looking for tournaments. So if you need a center for tournaments, I'll definitely like Jokic. Hassan Whiteside going up against Detroit. I really like Whiteside as well. You know Andre Drummond is not a good defender. And Whiteside is very cheap at just $37. He's been returning value every game lately. He's been very consistent as of late. In his last 5, he's put up 45, 37, 49, 36, and 43 fantasy points. So I definitely like Whiteside as well if you're going to pay it for center. Like I said, he's just been very consistent, and he can easily pay out that $37 price tag. Also like Andre Drummond going up in that same game, going up against Whiteside. Whiteside is not a good defender, and Drummond is pretty cheap at just $30. He needs about 30 to 35 to pay off that price, and he can definitely do that going up against Whiteside. Like I said, Whiteside's not a good defender, so I definitely like Drummond as well. He's way too cheap on Yahoo. He can easily pay off that price. Also at that same price, I do like Jusuf Nurkic going up against Denver. Denver really struggles to defend bigs. Nikola Jokic is not that good of a defender. Also like Nurkic if you're going to attack that price range. He has also been very consistent lately, getting over 30 fantasy points in 5 straight games. So I definitely like Nurkic as well if you want to pay up for center. I think he is in play. And another guy I'm really liking is Brook Lopez going up against the Sixers. The Sixers are one of the #1 teams to target when it comes to centers. They've been one of the worst teams defensively against the center now that they have lost Joel Embiid. They've really struggled against centers. So I definitely like Brook Lopez at the mid-range. I think he's a lock for 30 fantasy points in this matchup. This game should be close. It is in Brooklyn. So I'm really liking Brolo on the slate if you're going to attack the mid-range. The Sixers have not been able to stop any center lately. I definitely think Brolo is going to be able to have his way in this matchup. So I'm really liking him at the mid-range. Also for $2 less, I'm really liking Dwight Howard going up against Phoenix. With Paul Millsap out, Howard has really had to step up, and he's been playing very well. And he's way underpriced on Yahoo, just $25. He needs about 30 fantasy points to pay off that $25 price tag. And as you can see in his game log, he's been doing that lately. He's been very consistent. So I'm also really liking Dwight if you're going to attack the mid-range center. I definitely think he is in play. If you need some guys on the cheaper end, one guy I'm really liking is Richaun Holmes going up against Brooklyn. Jahlil Okafor has been out lately, and Holmes has been getting the start, and he's been playing heavy minutes. If he continues to start and Okafor is out for this game, he should be able to dominate against the Nets. They really struggle to defend centers. So if Jahlil Okafor is out today and Holmes gets the start, you definitely want to target him as a value play. He can easily pay off that $18 price tag, so I'm really liking Richaun Holmes for value. And another value play I like is Zubac going up against the Washington. The Wizards do struggle to defend centers, and Zubac's pretty cheap at just $15. He needs about 20 to 25 to pay off that price. And you can look in his box score. He's been doing that lately. Aside from that one game against Minnesota, he had put up 29, 22, 32, and 20 fantasy points. So if you need some value at center, I'm definitely like Zubac going up against Washington. The Wizards do struggle to defend centers, so I like him for value. And yeah, that's pretty much it for center. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my starting 5 for tonight. Alright guys, this is my starting 5 for tonight's slate on Tuesday, March 28th. If you guys want to get my lineups, then follow me on Twitter and send me a DM. I give out lineups for Yahoo, FanDuel, and DraftKings, so if you play on one of those 3 sites, then send me a message on Twitter, and I'll get you a lineup for whatever site you play on. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed. I upload these daily fantasy videos every single day, so if this is your first time on my channel, please be sure to subscribe. And if you never want to miss out on a video, then please be sure to click the bell icon next to my YouTube name, and you'll get notifications every time I upload. So if you never want to miss out on a video, please be sure to do that. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next video. Good luck tonight, guys. Peace.
Push me to the edge. All my friends are dead. Push me to the edge. All my friends are dead. Push me to the edge. All my friends are dead. Push me to the edge. Phantom, that's alright. Inside all white. Like something you ride a sled down. I just want that.